If you have to imagine how these paintings were meant to work, these paintings are about the amorous love affairs of the gods. That's what decorates the walls. On the ceiling you have this painting which represents Minerva in front of the arts and sciences. And these had messages for the people in the room. So in the room, whilst there was probably a certain amount of gaiety and sort of post-lunch informality with the king and his guests, nonetheless, if they looked around the room, they would have really received the message that would have said something like, come and disport yourself like gods and goddesses, live and love like them, but remember all the time that it's the king that's in charge. It's he that presides, like Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, over all artistic and scientific bounty that his country is full of since he came to the throne. He is the person to whom you owe loyalty, and that's the person who owns this beautiful building in which you're sitting. There would have been perhaps only people that William trusted in this space. There's not a lot to go on specifically to tell us exactly what went on in this room, but the room does have other chambers too, to which people could retreat to more privacy as well. So it also has its own sort of provisions. I mean, this is a space that can be catered for, where William's most intimate servants would have come and joined him in providing for his guests. But above all, it's really a space to indulge in those sort of the kind of things that we would do after a meal, dessert, coffee, but also to carry on drinking, when the real sort of business of state business of the day has already been done. Antonio Verrio painted around the walls of the banqueting house scenes of the amorous adventures of the gods and goddesses of the classical world. And these are mostly drawn from the pages of the Roman author Ovid, whose risque tales were very popular in the 17th and 18th century. Behind me we have the story of Bacchus, god of wine, amongst other things, rescuing Ariadne from her depression on the island of Naxos. Ariadne had been abandoned there by Theseus, who had been helped by Ariadne in rescuing himself from the Minotaur, but had rather thanklessly and ungraciously abandoned her on the island of Naxos. Bacchus rescues her, and this love story has a happy ending. Bacchus takes away Ariadne's crown and throws it into the heavens, where it becomes a constellation, and they go away together. Another thing about this portrait, this painting, which is also quite common in paintings by Antonio Verrio, is that Verrio's probably included a picture of himself in it. The painting behind me is how the river god Alpheus lustily pursued the nymph Arethusa, who appealed for protection from Diana, the goddess of virtue and chastity, among much other things. And Diana turned her first into a cloud, but Alpheus kept up the chase. But eventually Diana rescued Arethusa by turning her into a stream so that she flowed away out of Alpheus's reach. So all these stories are wonderfully colourful, but basically at bottom they are racy stories about the lust of gods. And this is a room to talk about those sorts of things. You also have other stories around the rooms, some of them not all that obvious necessarily, because they're quite simplistic, almost generic designs, but you can begin to guess what some of them are. There's the story of Pan, who pursued the river nymph Syrinx until she turned herself into some river reeds and escaped his attention. You have the story of Narcissus, who fell in love with himself and gazed at his reflection in the pond.